Welcome back to Tackett's House of Horsepower. It's me, Steve Tackett. And today is the day. We're gonna make some noise today, all right? Some serious noise. That little 406 build, today we're gonna hear it run. So buckle up. All right, this is it right here. If you watch the previous two episodes, you'll know that this is a budget build, spare parts, what I got laying around type of build. But it's really, I call it a budget build because there's really not much here. Really, it's inexpensive. This is a very inexpensive build. It's a 400 board 30 over. That's it. 2 volt main block, board 30 over. That's it. No other machine work done to it. It hasn't been decked. It hasn't been line board. It has nothing else done to it. Just 30 over. The crank is a stock 400 crank. It was turned 20 under, and that's it. The rotating assembly was balanced. All of it was balanced. That's the key. That's the most important thing. It was all balanced. The pistons are just some hypertectic flat top, 2 valve relief. Puts the compression with these heads are 64cc heads. That puts the compression at around 10.7, 10.6, somewhere in that ballpark. I used a 5.7 inch rod. So it's a longer rod than stock 400. So it would be a 406 cubic inch long rod. The heads are Motown 220s that I had laying around. They came off of my green Chevelle back in the day. So they're good heads. Motown 220 intake runner, 64 cc's. The intake manifold is an old, where is it? Strip Dominator. The carburetor is my old one off of the Nova. The Comp 9000, literally old. Everything here is old. I literally reused everything. I almost bought nothing new. The headers are used. Had them on my blue wagon forever. Just a set of Super Comps, 1.75 inch, fender well exit. This combo is meant to be put in a 65 Nova that we have sitting in the backyard. If you saw those videos, we rescued 2 little Novas. There's one. There's a 63 no post. I have a 65 post in the backyard. And I want to put this in it. So it's going to be pretty snappy. I think it's going to be around 530 horsepower, 520 horsepower-ish. So pump gas. Pretty reasonable engine. So today, I want to hear it run. I want to set the timing. I want to set the carburetor. I want to make sure there's no leaks. I want to make sure there's nothing clanging or banging. Good oil pressure, all that. We're gonna check all that today. And plus, I just like firing things off open header. It's what I like to do. So anyway, first things first though, because this is a fresh engine, everything is empty. The oil pump was primed by hand, but all the oil galleys and all the oil filter, all the passageways and stuff are empty. And when you fire off an engine, you don't want it to be dry. I don't want to wait 3, 5, 6 seconds for the oil pressure to come up. I want oil pressure right now. So the first thing I do with a fresh engine is pull the distributor out, and I've got a dummy distributor that I drop in and I spin it with a drill, and we prime the whole engine. We get good oil pressure first. before we ever turn the key or even put gas to it. I want to make sure I got good oil pressure. So that's going to be step one today. So let's put it on top dead center, and we'll pull the distributor out. All right, top dead center. Number one, compression stroke. See the rotor? I know the rotor's pointing at number one cylinder, so this is the compression stroke. If it was on the exhaust stroke, the rotor would be pointing the wrong direction. So I know exactly where the distributor is, so I can pull it, do my oil prime, and drop it right back in right where it was. All right, so I go ahead and I put an oil pressure gauge on there real quick. And then I have an old distributor that I basically took all the guts out of. I took the gear off the bottom, and it's got that nub on top, perfect for a drill. I can grab it with a drill chuck. And we drop this in, and I go get my drill, and we'll spin it. We'll spin it for a couple minutes and make sure oil is just circulating everywhere we need it to be. Okay, so here we go. I got my drill on here, tightened down, ready to go. Now I can start spinning this. I got a little gauge right here. Now it might take a second because remember, the oil filter's empty, all the galleys are empty, you know, all the little passageways are empty. So it might take a second for this thing to come up. So don't panic right away. You know, just keep going. All right. Some people do this by cranking the engine. I don't like that. You're gonna kill the starter. It's really not turning it very fast. If you're doing it with a starter, you're really not turning the engine fast enough, really, to get oil pressure up very quickly. You're just gonna end up killing the battery, melting the wires, heating up the starter. It's not, just don't do that. I like doing it this way for several reasons. One, if I do this, and I think this is a critical step and everyone should be doing it, because what if there's a problem? What if the pickup tube isn't seated in all the way, or what if the oil pump isn't primed, or what if you forgot an oil galley plug somewhere? You know what I mean? I want to know about it now. It's way better to find the problem now than find the problem, you got a problem after you've installed the engine into a car. You know, I'd rather find out about it now. So here we go. All the way up to 70. It's good. Real good. I like it. Now I'll keep doing that. I'll do that a couple of times, 2-3 times, and I'll make sure that oil is everywhere. You know, so I'm real confident that when I hit the key the first time, I'm gonna have oil pressure right away. So that's good. I take away as many of the guesswork as possible. Now, if I was to do this with my drill, and I didn't get good oil pressure, I would not try to fire the engine. You know, it's better to take it back apart, go cry for a minute if you have to, but then you gotta find out why. Is there a problem with the oil pump, the pickup tube? Is there an oil galley plug that you missed? You know, it's the littlest thing, you know, that could cost you the engine. So it's better to do this now than just send it and pray for the best, you know. So I prefer doing this. All right, I did that 3 times for about a minute or so, minute each time. And it had 70 pounds of oil pressure the whole time. So I'm pretty confident we're good to go. So I dropped the distributor back in. We are on top dead center, like right on zero. So the rotor was pointed like right at the carburetor stud. So I made the number one spark plug wire slightly advanced. The rotor spins this way. If we're on zero over here, back it up a little ways. I know I'm advanced slightly. So it should be close. It should be close enough to fire. And then I leave the distributor bolt kind of snug, not too tight, so I can move this, you know, if I need to. So I think we are go for launch. All right, we're off the engine stand. Now I gotta move the green car to get the test stand out of there. That thing collapses up and folds up, and I shove it over here against the wall. So give me a minute. I gotta move cars and stuff to get that out of there, and then bring it over here. We'll set it up, and then we'll start making some noise. I've never actually parked them next to each other. Look, they're twins. Well, I had to dig out the black hole over here to get to this. So yeah, this is the never seen side of the garage. Just engine blocks and transmissions everywhere. Okay, so now I can pull this over there and get it set up. All right, check it out. So this is my engine test stand. And I made this in a day, like 20 years ago. And we were just gonna use it once and throw it away, but we've had it, we've kept it, we use it all the time. I don't know, it turned out to work so good that we just kind of held on to it. The side pieces collapse and the back piece slides in, see that? So it's all adjustable. You can adjust the leg heights and widths and the lengths. So you can fit a straight six or a big block or a small block or whatever you want. I'm sure you could just change this bell housing and you could put a Ford bell housing or whatever you want on here and it would work. See what I mean? I actually built this for my buddy Chris. My buddy Chris had a 240Z. I built him a 350 for it, and it was a nasty, solid, flat tappet cam. And I'm like, we got to break it in. But on a 240Z, there's like no room to, we had to switch the valve springs. We had to take the inner spring out and run the cam, break it in. But in a 240Z, like there's no room to get in here with my valve spring compressor. And it was a small block 350 with long tube headers. And I was like, there's no way. We're not going to be able to get this in and out. The engine was a nightmare. So I was like, you know what? Let's break it in on a test stand. So I went ahead and made one. We broke in his engine, put it in the 240Z. Everything worked out great. And I've just kind of held on to it ever since. I don't know. Check this out. You ever seen an MSD box that old? And it still works. I bought a 66 El Camino once, and this was in it. And I took it out, you know, whatever. I just put an HEI in it and got it running. But I had this in the shelf in one of my drawers, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna throw it on the test stand. Maybe it'll work. And guess what? Of course it still works. In fact, we're gonna use it today. All right, we're basically there. We're on the test stand. The bell housing is bolted up. And there we go. I just gotta hook up the gauges, hook up the ignition, put the carburetor back on, run the fuel line down. I've got an electric fuel pump and a filter. So I just put my gas can on the floor, run this hose into the gas can, run the electric pump. I prime the system. And basically the whole point of this is to have it so that I can hit the key and go. It should fire right off. You know, I want fuel pressure immediately. I want oil pressure immediately. You know, I don't want to be cranking and cranking and cranking. So that's the whole point of this test stand, you know. Now this is a roller cam, so I don't really, it's not critical. You know, if this was a flat tappet cam, then we would have to do the whole 20, 30 minutes, keep it revved up, you know, 2 to 3,000 RPM, fluctuate, you know, do all that. I don't need to do all that. This is a roller cam, so as long as I got oil pressure and fuel and I hit the key and it starts, you know, we're safe, you know. So I'm almost done. Oh, I gotta run to the gas station and get some gas, some good old 91 octane right out of the pump. And we should be just about ready. All right, other than this hose barely reached, so I had to scooch the radiator over quite a bit, but who cares? Other than that, I don't like the way this alternator sits. I kind of want to change the clock position on the back of the alternator to get that stud over on this side maybe, but I can fix that later. I got a 45 for that, so it doesn't go over the top of the valve cover, so I can remove the valve cover if I need to. So I like that. Everything's hooked up, gauges, ignition, that's all done. I think we're ready. I just got to steal a battery out of Sarah's car. I'm going to steal a battery out of Sarah's car and gas. We need gas. And then it's showtime, I think. I'm getting kind of nervous. I don't know. I always do right before I fire off an engine. You know what I mean? All right, we got a battery successfully stolen. Got some gas. What I like to do is go ahead and flip on my fuel pump. Hear it? Make sure I got gas. There we go. My accelerator pump is not doing so hot. Well, let me check into that real quick before we go any further. I feel fuel coming out somewhere. I'm not really getting any squirt. All right, let me check that out before we go any further. All right, simple solution. You got that little orange rubber, it's a reed valve is what it is. It's supposed to allow fuel to suck in, but then under pressure it's supposed to shut closed, so it forces the fuel to come out this hole and go out the squirter. Well, as you can see, it's all misshapen, so it's not closing off the bottom here. So as you squirt, it's just letting fuel back and forth inside the bowl. It's not actually forcing the fuel to come out that hole. So we just need to pop in a new one of these. It probably just dried out from sitting. No big deal, easy fix. So you pop the new one in and it sits nice and flush. It's not curling up on the sides like the other one was. But then be careful, you don't want that tail sticking down and then the float hits it. See that? So pop it in so it's flush. There's a little nub it has to snap in, and then trim it off. You want to trim that off. You don't want it sticking out like that. All right, let's try it now. That's better. Now we got an accelerator pump. All right, I filled the radiator with water, and I crack this loose right here so that the air can come out. I get as much of the air out as possible. And I think we're ready. All right, here goes nothing. I got my timing light out. I'm gonna set this at 34. That's a good place to start. 34 all in. That's with centrifugal advance and everything. So what I'll have to do is start the engine, rev it up, check it with my timing light, and when it's all in, I want 34 to be on 0. So on my 0 mark down there on the timing tab, I want 0 to be at 34, like, 3,000 RPM-ish, somewhere around there. Okay. I'm nervous. You nervous? I'm nervous. Give it a little squirt. Here goes. Wow. I'm going the wrong way. So my front bowl is dumping fuel right now, so that's why it's popping and sputtering. So I need to check my needle. I wonder if that dried out too and it's dumping fuel. It was definitely pouring out of those front boosters. So that explains why it doesn't want to run. All right, let me pull that front needle. All right, I got updates. I'm fighting intermittent ignition problems. I changed out the cap, that didn't do it. I changed out the ignition box because I figured, you know what, it's probably my luck. I bragged about having this old MSD box still working, and so I switched it out. That wasn't it. So I'm down to coil, possibly the pickup inside the distributor, but it's running right now, but it's still dumping fuel out of the front boosters. So I'm thinking, I gotta check the power valve. I'm wondering if there's a hole in that diaphragm, possibly. I'm not sure. I gotta dig into this little carburetor a little bit. It's, like I said, it's been sitting. So I'm fighting two issues, I think, right now. But bear with me. Okay. I think we got it figured out. Well, hopefully. We're gonna try it here again in a second. I've been fighting an ignition problem. I thought it was the box, same thing. Oh yeah, I went through a bunch of stuff. Turns out that my little ignition switch here, this little guy, the post on the back for ignition on, yeah, it's not always on. It's randomly connecting when I want to, and then when I'm cranking, it turns off, and then when I let go, it turns back on. Sometimes it stays on, sometimes it don't. So I'm just gonna jump for the ignition on for now. So I got the carburetor taken back apart. I put a new power valve in it. I didn't really see anything wrong with the other one, so I'm not sure. Anyways, I want to try it again, so here we go. Okay, here goes attempt number 58. I don't know. Wow. All right. Let's try an experiment. I took the carburetor off of Down and Dirty, so let's see what happens. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Put my my jumper wire back on because, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Put my jumper wire back on because, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Put my jumper wire back on because, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Put my jumper wire back on because, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Put my jumper wire back on because, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Put my jumper wire back on because, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Put my jumper wire back on because, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Put my jumper wire back on because, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Put my jumper wire back on because, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Put my jumper wire back on because, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Put my jumper wire back on because, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Put my jumper wire back on because, I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Put my jumper wire back on because, I mean, what's the worst that co Yeah. All right, here we go. Well, it doesn't want to idle. I think I had a big air bubble in it because it got the temperature real fast. Well, it runs. It's got good oil pressure. It doesn't clang or bang or no leaks, nothing like that. But it doesn't want to idle. It seems like the intake manifold's leaking or something, like maybe the gaskets are not on something. I'm not sure. I need to dig into it more. I'm not happy with how it runs. The tune is off. The timing was only at 29 degrees, but I wasn't able to get the idle, so I don't know how much it's retarding because I never got it down below like 2,000 RPMs. So I'm sure there's some centrifugal advance still in it, but you saw there it was at 29. But when I rev it up, it goes to like 34. So I'm not really sure what it is at idle because I haven't been able to idle it yet. So I don't know. That carburetor did run better than the other carburetor, so I might have been fighting two issues, but it does seem like there's maybe something else going on, and it's difficult. You got an ignition problem or a timing problem and a fuel problem. They can kind of act similar. So if you're fighting one or both, you're really going to have difficulties finding it. So that's why we use the test stand. You know, this is a perfect example of why we have the test stand. That's water on the floor. It did get hot enough that when I shut it off, it spit up some water. So I hope that was just an air bubble in the cylinder heads. I don't know. I shut it off. So for the most part, the engine is safe. It's safe and sound, and it runs, and it's got oil pressure, and everything's fine. It's just a tune issue, probably vacuum leak. I don't know, something. It's something stupid. And I spent half the day chasing an electrical problem. It happens. You know what I mean? It happens. This is the magic of YouTube. It's you see how it is. Sometimes it's beautiful and it worked perfect. Sometimes not so much. So, okay, guys, check this out. I've been out here. I came back a couple days. It's been a couple days. Sorry. I came out with a clear head, and I'm like, what is going on with this thing? It runs rough. It misfires. If it runs at all, it wants to misfire and die. It's doing all kinds of stuff. I thought maybe it was ignition. I changed out the box. I looked at the cap. I didn't see nothing wrong. I don't know. But watch this. Just watch. Okay. If I take a spark plug and I hook it up to the cap, like that's where number one would be. And when I crank it, let's see if I have spark. Nothing. Now watch. I'll take it off of the cap and I'll switch it out with the rotor, or I'll switch it off with the coil. Now I'm going directly to the coil. All right, directly to the coil. Watch this. So if I come directly off the coil, I got really good spark. And it's like, it's intermittent. Sometimes, like I said, it'll die. Sometimes it'll run. I don't know what it's doing. Put this back. Now I'm back. Now it's running through the cap and rotor and coming back. This thing should spark every time number one hits, right? Nothing. So something between this wire, the cap, and the rotor is a problem. Process of elimination, I guess. I don't know. But I mean, I have been scratching my head trying to figure this one out. It's been kicking my, you know what. Anyways, it's kind of hard to tune this thing when I don't have spark. So let me keep plugging away at it. I haven't given up yet. Well, that's a big improvement. Well, I didn't show it all, but that was the most difficult engine test stand run ever. And I think it's because of trying to film it for YouTube. Like the YouTube gods didn't want me to succeed on this one, I guess. I don't know. I had ignition switch problems. I had ignition problems. It turned out the rotor, I don't know if it's the problem or not, but I pulled the rotor off and inside you could see it was kind of black. So I'm thinking it was arcing somehow down into the shaft of the distributor, because I checked spark all the way to the cap and it was good. But as soon as I put the cap on, I lost spark. So I'm thinking it was arcing down the center of the rotor. So I stole the rotor out of Down and Dirty, put it on there, fired right up. So I need to order a new cap and rotor. I'm gonna start there. But it runs, it sounds pretty good. It's pretty responsive, I'm pretty happy with it. The oil pressure was good. I've ran it several times. I got it up to temperature several times now. The oil pressure never fluctuated. And if you saw the video of the oil pressure fluctuation problems and the oil pump pickup screen came loose, you saw those videos. This is the same bottom end. So I was concerned that, you know, maybe there'd be an issue, but it's rock solid. It never dropped below 80. Even when the temperature shot way up, like it never drops below 80, but it never idled. So I never got it below like $2,000. So whatever, 80 PSI, you saw it. It stayed rock solid. So I'm okay. I think the engine mechanically is fine. I got to work out the bugs with the distributor. I think cap and rotor should take care of that. I never did get to that double pumper either, so I'd like to check it out. But I'm also kind of worried. I think there might be a vacuum leak. So I'm wondering if those 1206 gaskets, maybe it's a little bit long on the bottom, and maybe I'm sucking air. I don't know. If it was sucking air on the bottom, I would think you would have smoke. It would be sucking oil, but it's not doing that. But I don't know. So maybe I'll pull the intake. I don't know. Man, this thing fought me. It fought me. But at least it's running, and I'm confident the engine is okay. So I'm confident to put it in that little 65. So I think I'm gonna hit up my buddy Justin, see where my transmission's at, get that little Nova in the garage, put the engine and tranny together, and it's ready to drop in the car. I think I might pull the intake and double check the gaskets, possibly, but for the most part, I think the engine is good to go. And I really appreciate you guys watching, liking, subscribing, commenting, thumbs up, all that stuff, sharing with your friends. All that stuff really helps me, and I appreciate it. So I think next week we got to do some work to down and dirty. I got my seats, bucket seats, ready to go. Put those in, slap the mirrors and stuff on it. We'll call it legal and take it on down to the MVD, get my plates and tags for that thing, and that guy's ready to go. And then switch Novas and get started on installing this stuff. So if you like any of that, it sounds good, please hit that bell, hit subscribe, follow along, give me a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, all that, any of that stuff. It's great. I really appreciate it. So, till next time, thanks.